I'm Emma Jean, and I learned early in life that appearances can be deceiving. Growing up in a modest apartment above my parents' small grocery store, I watched them work tirelessly, saving every penny they could. What our neighbors didn't know was that my parents were silent investors in several successful tech startups, teaching me that true wealth doesn't need to announce itself. Remember, Emma, my father would say while counting the day's earnings. Money talks, but wealth whispers. I took those words to heart, excelling in finance and economics. I worked part-time at our store while building my knowledge. By 25, I had earned my MBA and quietly built an investment portfolio worth millions. Despite my success, I preferred to keep it private, allowing others to underestimate me. That's how I met Michael. It was a rainy Tuesday at a local coffee shop where I often worked on my laptop, managing my investments under the guise of an ordinary young professional. Michael burst in, drenched and flustered, only to realize he'd forgotten his wallet when the card reader failed. I noticed his worn but high-quality briefcase, likely a treasured gift, and his kind eyes. "I've got it," I said, stepping forward to pay. "Oh, no, I couldn't," he stammered, clearly embarrassed. "Consider it karma," I replied with a smile. "Maybe you can return the favor someday." That favor turned into dinner the following week. Michael was charming, genuine, and refreshingly down-to-earth. He worked as a middle manager at Preston Financial, one of the city's largest investment firms. "It's not the most exciting job," he admitted over pasta, "but it's stable." I admired his honesty. Stability was, after all, a cornerstone of my own financial philosophy. What I didn't tell him was that I owned a significant number of shares in Preston Financial and had been monitoring the company for months, eyeing its untapped potential. Our relationship blossomed. Michael's kindness and humility won me over, and a year later, he proposed with his grandmother's ring. "It's not much," he said nervously, "but it's been in the family for generations." "It's perfect," I assured him, cherishing the sentiment behind the modest diamond. Then, I met his family. Michael's sister, Catherine, was a senior analyst at Preston Financial, known for leveraging office politics to climb the corporate ladder. From our first meeting, she made her disdain for me clear. "So, what do you do?" she asked during a family dinner, her wine glass dangling from manicured fingers. "I'm a secretary at Rivera Corp," I said, sticking to my cover story. While true in a technical sense, the position was more of a strategic front to stay attuned to industry trends. "Oh," Catherine said, exchanging a knowing look with their mother, Eleanor. "How quaint." "Michael always did have a soft spot for charity cases," Eleanor added, sipping her wine. Michael shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. That silence became a pattern. After we married, Catherine's barbs grew sharper. At an office Christmas party, she loudly remarked, "Sandra from accounting is single now. She's a junior partner, much more suitable for Michael." I kept my composure, even as Michael's reluctance to defend me stung. "I just want to keep the peace," he'd say. What they didn't know was that I'd been steadily increasing my stake in Preston Financial, preparing for its much-needed modernization. When a merger with Rivera Corp was announced, Catherine saw it as her big opportunity to shine. "This will finally show the board what real talent looks like," she boasted at a family dinner, "unlike some people who can barely manage a filing cabinet." Eleanor chimed in, "Ambition is important, dear. Not everyone is content with mediocrity." Her pointed glance at me didn't go unnoticed. What they didn't realize was that I had orchestrated the merger. Through shell companies and careful negotiations, I now owned 40% of Rivera Corp and soon, 40% of the newly formed Preston Rivera Financial Group. The announcement came at the company's annual gala, held at Catherine's exclusive country club. She'd gleefully informed me that staff can use the service entrance. Dressed in a simple black gown, I entered quietly, blending in as Catherine flaunted her designer silk and worked the room, introducing Michael to more suitable women. "Oh, Emma," she called out, feigning sweetness, "the catering staff needs help in the kitchen. I told them you'd feel right at home." Her laughter rippled through her circle, and Michael pretended not to notice. Then, the CEO of Rivera Corp., Mr. Harrison, arrived. Spotting me immediately, he called out, "Mrs. Jean, the woman of the hour." Catherine froze, her smile faltering. "Excuse me?" she managed to say. "I'd like to introduce our new Chief Financial Officer and major shareholder, Emma Jean," Mr. Harrison announced, his voice carrying across the room. Without her vision for this merger, none of us would be here tonight. The room fell silent. Catherine's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. "That's impossible," she stammered. "She's a secretary." "Oh, I did work at Rivera Corp., I replied with a calm smile. "The best way to understand a company is from the ground up. But I've also been one of the largest shareholders in both Preston Financial and Rivera Corp. For the past 3 years. Eleanor's face turned a deep shade of purple. "But the country club membership?" she sputtered. "I've been a member for 5 years, I said, meeting her eyes. "In fact, I'm on the board." "Interesting, we never ran into each other." Michael pushed through the crowd, his face a mix of shock and shame. "Emma," he started hesitantly, "why didn't you tell me?" I held his gaze steadily. "Would it have changed anything? Would you have finally stood up to them?" Before he could answer, Catherine found her voice, trembling with indignation. "This is ridiculous. I've worked here for 8 years. I earned my position." "About that," Mr. Harrison interjected. "Mrs. Jean has brought some concerning documents to our attention, unauthorized trades under client accounts, to be exact." Catherine's face turned ghostly white. "We'll need to discuss this in detail on Monday," he continued. "For now, I suggest you enjoy what might be your last company event." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of shocked faces and hasty congratulations. Eleanor and Catherine left early, citing sudden headaches. Michael tried to catch my eye, but I was busy with business discussions. Back at home, the silence was deafening. "All this time," Michael finally said, breaking the stillness. "You let them treat you like that." "Why?" "Because I needed to see who people really were," I replied. "Money changes how people treat you. I wanted to know if I could count on you to stand by me, no matter my bank account." "And did I pass that test?" he asked quietly. I studied him for a long moment. "What do you think?" The next morning, I arrived at my new office early. The weekend security guard did a double take at my upgraded access badge. My phone buzzed nonstop with dozens of missed calls and texts from Eleanor, Catherine, and Michael. "Please come home. I know I messed up. Emma, I love you, don't throw away our marriage." But I had work to do. In the conference room, the audit team was already assembled, armed with the evidence I'd spent months gathering. "Shall we begin?" Mr. Harrison greeted me. The case against Catherine was damning. Over 3 years, she had orchestrated a sophisticated scheme of unauthorized trades, siphoning over $5 million from dormant accounts, primarily targeting elderly investors. My stomach churned when I confirmed one of the accounts belonged to Michael's grandmother. Catherine had stolen nearly $200,000 from her own family. As we reviewed the evidence, my assistant interrupted. "Mrs. Jean, your mother-in-law is in the lobby causing a scene." I sighed. "Send her up." Eleanor burst into the room, her designer handbag swinging wildly. "How dare you, you manipulative schemer," she shrieked. "This is a private meeting," Mr. Harrison said sharply. "Private? Nothing's private anymore thanks to this gold digger." Do you know what she's done to our family? I met her gaze calmly. Do you know what your daughter has done to your mother-in-law's retirement fund? That stopped her cold. What? Eleanor whispered. I slid the account statement across the table. Her face paled as she read the numbers. This must be a mistake. No mistake, I said. Catherine stole from her own grandmother and dozens of others. Eleanor sank into a chair, her anger deflated. But she said she was doing so well. She was at fraud, I replied bluntly. The police will be here within the hour. I suggest you get her a good lawyer. As if on cue, Catherine stormed in, with Michael trailing behind her. You can't do this, she screeched. I've worked too hard. Save it for the police, Mr. Harrison interrupted. They're very interested in your creative accounting. Michael stepped forward. Emma, please, there must be another way. She's my sister. I looked at him, feeling the weight of his words. And I'm your wife, or did you forget that every time she humiliated me? I didn't know about any of this, he protested. You didn't want to know, I corrected. Just like you didn't want to see how they treated me. It was easier to stay quiet, wasn't it? Catherine, her desperation mounting, tried one last gambit. I have dirt on other people. If I go down, save your threats, I cut her off. Every trade, every transfer, every doctored document has been traced. Your dirt won't save you from prison. Eleanor began to weep. Think of our family name. Like Catherine thought of her grandmother's retirement fund? I shot back. The police arrived shortly after, their presence cold and unyielding as they led Catherine away in handcuffs. She turned to Michael, her voice desperate and sharp. Are you really going to let her destroy our family? Michael stood frozen, the weight of her words and the damning evidence around him pulling him into silence. Torn between family loyalty and moral obligation, he couldn't bring himself to speak. That was my answer. Send the divorce papers to my lawyer, I said calmly, turning toward the exit. I'll have my things out by tonight. Emma, wait. Michael's hand caught my arm, his voice trembling. I know I failed you, but please, give me a chance to make it right. I gently removed his hand, looking at him with a clarity I hadn't allowed myself to feel before. You had 3 years of chances. Every time they belittled me, every time they treated me like I didn't belong, that was your chance to stand by me. You chose your side a long time ago, Michael. The aftermath was swift and unforgiving. Catherine pleaded guilty to multiple counts of fraud and theft, receiving an 8-year prison sentence and an order to repay millions in restitution. Eleanor and Michael's father were forced to sell their country club membership and downsize their home to cover her legal fees. I poured my energy into transforming Preston Rivera Financial. We overhauled oversight processes, modernized technology, and established a restitution fund for Catherine's victims. Michael's grandmother was the first to receive full compensation, a small comfort for the betrayal she'd endured. Months passed. I granted Michael an amicable divorce, even letting him keep the apartment. Some called me overly generous, but I chose to remember the kind man who once offered me his umbrella on a rainy day. He wasn't a bad person, just a weak one. One evening, as I worked late in my office, my assistant entered with an unexpected visitor, Michael's grandmother. She walked in slowly, leaning on her cane, the engagement ring I once wore now glinting softly on her hand. I owe you a visit, she said, settling into a chair, to thank you for protecting my retirement and to apologize. You have nothing to apologize for, I assured her. Oh, but I do. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was the engagement ring. I want you to keep this, she said. I couldn't possibly. You protected not just my savings, but my dignity. That's worth more than any ring, she said, her smile gentle and genuine. Besides, you've always felt more like a granddaughter to me than Catherine ever did. After she left, I stood at my office window, watching the city lights blink to life. The ring sat on my desk, a quiet symbol, not of loss, but of clarity, strength, and self-respect. Eleanor still tries to contact me from time to time, usually when she needs money. Catherine writes letters from prison, alternating between threats and desperate pleas for help with her appeal. I forward them all to my lawyers. Michael sent one final email. I finally understand what real strength looks like. It's not about keeping the peace but standing up for what's right. I'm sorry I learned that lesson too late. Take care of yourself, Emma. I did keep the ring, not as a token of the past, but as a reminder of the future I had reclaimed. Self-respect, integrity, the knowledge that true wealth lies in being unwaveringly true to yourself. Last week, I approved a new financial literacy program for seniors, free workshops to help them safeguard their investments. We named it after Michael's grandmother. Turning pain into protection felt like the right thing to do. As the morning sun streamed through my office window, I reviewed the latest merger proposals, hearing my father's voice echo in my mind. Money talks, but wealth whispers. He was right, but he forgot one thing. Integrity roars, and that's a sound even the highest walls of privilege can't silence.